guys, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Robbie Cassidy, and today we're going to discuss what should be included in a prehab program. Now, before I jump into this podcast, I want to talk a small bit about my new hamstring tolerance program that's out at the moment, and it is basically a hamstring prehab or hamstring prevention program, injury prevention program, I should say. And basically the program is made up of mobility, strength and plyometric exercises, and it also includes an on-pitch warm-up that you can do to try target the hamstrings a bit more. But the goal of the program is to help reduce risk, or to reduce the risk of hamstring injuries by building tolerance in the hamstring. And what I mean by tolerance is that in general hamstrings are torn when there's too much load put on them too quick, and they can't tolerate that load, so then the muscle itself gets strained. So the idea behind this program is to build strength and build tolerance and capacity through the hips and the hamstring so that it's able to handle that load when it does come, or tolerate that load when it comes on. And in the program, I also discuss how you use the program and how to incorporate it into your training if you're in season, in terms of when you do it. So I have people doing it after their training sessions or mixing it in with their gym sessions, as opposed to taking a recovery day and doing it on a recovery day. So as I said, it's made up of 3 days. You have your strength, mobility and plyometric exercises. It also talks about load management a good bit in the program. I have a video that I discuss load management, how to structure your week and then recovery. And on top of that, I also talk about sleep and hydration, because they're all included in it. They're all really important to take into account. And if you want to find that program, it's available on my website at the moment, or you can actually just go straight into my Instagram, click the link in my bio and you'll find it there. So jumping into this podcast, as I said, this podcast is going to be about what should be included in a prehab program, and it goes off the back of that, what I've just talked about as well. So I wanted to release this podcast so that I have a hamstring one out now, I have a knee and a shoulder one coming out soon, but there's people that have other injuries as well, and they want to know themselves what can they do and how can they handle it themselves in the season or off season and reduce their risk of injury overall, so they're not sitting on the sideline and watching games, because you want to be involved in games, obviously. So what I'm going to talk about here today is I'm going to talk about when should you actually schedule your prehab. So when do you fit it into your week in season, and what do you do when it's off season? I want to talk about the difference between in season and off season training, and then I also want to talk about what should be included. And I discuss joints and I discuss muscles, because obviously you have to take both into account. Both are slightly different when you're looking to reduce risk of injury, and what you should include in the program. So to get right into it, some of the problems that people have with prehab programs is that when they're looking at prehab is that they're doing too much in the season. Like, they're trying to fit in 3 days of training, and they're also trying to fit in 3 days then of gym work. And then that's just doing too much. The load is too high, and because of that, they're fatigued. When you're fatigued, then you're obviously increasing your risk of injury. You would have heard me say it a load of times in different podcasts, but a really, really good example of this is that 75% of all ACL injuries are going to happen in the last 15 minutes of a game. Okay, so it's really, really comes down to fatigue. There's a lot of other things involved, but in a general sense, if there's one thing you need to control, it's your fatigue levels and your recovery. If you're not controlling those, you're going to find that you're going to pick up small niggles, and then you're at risk of bigger injuries as well. So that's one of the main things with people who are trying to reduce risk of injury, even that they're doing too much in the season, and they're actually because they're trying to cover all bases, and then they're actually increasing their risk overall. So on top of that, then I want to talk a small bit about when should you actually do your prehab. So when do you schedule it? Now, if it's in season, because it's more applicable now because people are in season, but in season, off season, it's going to be a small bit different. So if you're in season, you should be doing it either after your training sessions, or you should be mixing it in with your gym work that you're already doing. Okay, and this is really important. So doing your prehab work at the end of a training session, there is benefit to this, and there's a lot of research showing that it can reduce risk overall, and it's an excellent time to do it, because you're already warmed up and you're ready to go. But second, you're actually a good bit fatigued, and because you're building on that, your body's ability to tolerate loads under fatigue, then you'll see that you can reduce your risk overall, because it gets better at that. And as I said, fatigue is a huge player when it comes to injury. So a lot of guys, I just tell them to pick your exercises, or with this hamstring program even, I tell guys to do it after your training session. And there's another added bonus to that as well, is that you are getting an extra recovery day then, because a lot of the time if you train on a Monday, a lot of people will be taking Tuesday off, and Tuesday is a recovery day. So it's really, really important to give the body time to recover. Now, something that I see that people, they make a couple of mistakes on is that they'll do that and then they'll plan a prehab day, but basically they have such a high load during the week that prehab day is actually just building on fatigue. So it's compounding the fatigue that's already there. So instead of actually reducing their risk, they're increasing their risk because they're not giving the body a chance to recover from the sessions that it just went through. So I prefer you to train to your, let's say, 80% of your max on that day. So you go through your field session, let's say that takes 70% out of you, and then you do your prehab after, and that might be 10 or 15%, and you've only, so you're up to 85% of your max, let's say, completely before you're completely gassed, and then you take Tuesday off to recover fully. Okay, as opposed to training to 70% on the Monday and then hitting that 15, 20, even 30% on a Tuesday, because it does have more an effect on you on the next day, because you still have to warm up, you still have to go through all your exercises, you're going to be putting in a good bit of strength, and you're fatigued from the night before as well, so you're not fully recovered. So I would prefer to just hit it hard one day and then take the next day off as recovery, as opposed to continually just tipping over all the time. Okay, so consistency is important. But recovery is really, really important with this as well. And I'm talking about specifically in season here now at the moment. Okay, so that's going to be one of the main ones. Now, if you are stuck for time after training and you're finding it hard to get your couple of exercises in, then I would say mix it in with your gym work. So if you're already doing 2 gym sessions a week, I would say to try mix in your prehab work in with that, in with your gym sessions. And it's good to vary it as well. So if you're doing your gym sessions and you're hitting your squats, your deadlifts, your RDLs and your lunges or split squats, whatever, it's nice to mix in these exercises, because you can do some of the prehab exercises in between sets and it doesn't actually fatigue you so much so that you can actually do the set again. So it's nearly like a recovery set in a way. Now, I know prehab is isolated, and this is the really important thing with doing it in season. Because you're working on isolated, or because you're really, really working on specific exercises and you're isolating certain muscles, you're going to fatigue those muscles fairly significantly. So it is really important that you have to keep that in mind, that you are working those muscles very specifically, so you are at risk of injuring them in your next training session if you haven't given yourself enough recovery time. And this plays back again to that fact that I say do it on a Monday, take Tuesday off, because you'll probably train it on a Wednesday again. So if you are training hard on Monday and you're doing all sprints, then you're doing prehab on a Tuesday, and you go to Wednesday session and you have already done your prehab, then you're working at a, let's say, hamstring that it's only maybe 30% energy, 40% energy in it, so, or 40% of its capacity. So you're at huge risk of injury there, because you've just doubled down on the fact that it was already fatigued and you're already at risk of injuring it. So that's why I say mix it in with your gym work where possible, okay? And recovery is going to be the biggest thing in season about prehab. If you have to miss a I would say to people to miss a prehab day, or even take a gym session off and get a recovery day in, more so than get an extra gym session in or get an extra prehab session in, because that will make the difference overall. Okay, so mixing it in with your gym work is excellent. You're already in the gym, you're already warmed up, it takes no time to go through it. And then especially with the fact that as I talk through this, you'll hear the different stuff to be included in your sessions, is the mobility aspect of it as well is huge. So you can do your mobility stuff on your day off if you want to, as long as it's light work and it's not causing you any harm, and it's not fatiguing muscles. And then you can do that in the gym as well, because you can do your mobility and then your isolated strength work and your plyometrics with your actual session. Okay, so really, if you are looking to do something on your day off, I would be working specifically on the mobility stuff, and I'd be leaving the rest of the strength and plyometrics to another day. Okay, now in the off season, small bit different. You can break it down over the week, so you can still get in your 3 sessions a week. And you can work it in with your strength work as well, or you could take a full day in that week to work on prehab stuff also, okay? But I would still be looking to hit it a couple of times a week, because you're looking to get sets over the whole week. You're not looking, this is in the off season now, hitting it on one day is excellent, but if you hit 4 sets of hamstrings on one day, very good. You're going to build strong hamstrings, you're going to build good capacity and good tolerance through them. But if you can hit 16 sets of hamstrings over the whole week, that's a different story. That's a different type of a stimulus then, and it's able to tolerate way, way higher loads. So hitting 16 sets is hitting 4 on a Monday, hitting 4 on a Wednesday, and then hitting, let's say, 4 on a Friday, and you might be able to get a few in at the weekend. So 16 sets is probably, when I think about it now, 16 sets is probably a lot. So you'd be looking between that 12 and 16 set mark, unless you're going to be getting in an extra day. Now, I know in the off season a lot of guys do train 5 days a week, so you could be working that in as well. But let's say you are already hitting RDL, so you're doing hamstring there, and then you're hitting your Nordics, and you're hitting hamstrings there. That's 8 sets in one day. So really, it does depend what kind of gym work you're doing, what kind of injuries you've had in the past. I'm talking specifically on hamstrings here now because it's a really easy one to use or make examples for. But if anyone else, if you have any other injury, you can apply the same principles. So you're looking to increasing your sets across the week, off season, and that's going to be one of the main factors, is that you're not just hitting all in one day, that you're actually breaking them up over the week. And then, as I said already, you're mixing it in with your strength work. So you're looking at what you're already doing. If you're already doing RDLs, you're already doing Nordics, you're hitting those 2 exercises, it might be good then to use a few accessory ones like a hamstring curl. Even though I like hamstring curl is good, I wouldn't push it massively because it's not exactly a weight-bearing exercise. I try keep a lot of the exercises as weight-bearing ones because there's more neurological adaptation through a weight-bearing exercise. Weight-bearing is obviously putting weight through your feet, or force coming up through your feet as well. And the lying hamstring curl doesn't do that as much. So that's why I like to stick to those. The Nordic is a small bit different because it's working on eccentric strength. So it's working on controlling you as the muscle lengthens. So that's why Nordic is a small bit different. But you should be looking for weight-bearing exercises where possible, because on the pitch it's a weight-bearing game. You're not on the ground. It's not like jiu-jitsu where you're rolling around on the ground as much. You are weight-bearing through your feet all day. Or all session, I should say. So that's the main ones, or that's kind of the main, like when you should do it. They're kind of the main pointers that I wanted to get across. Now, when you look at the difference between in-season and off-season training and what's included, actually, no, what I'll do is I'll jump through what you should include, and then I'll jump back to that after. So what you should actually include in the program, or what you're looking to include in the program, is going to be very dependent on the type of injuries that you've had in the past, and then what type of, let's say, weaknesses you have now. All right. So let's say we'll break it into 2 sections just for example's sake and just to make it easier. So you have, let's say, break it into your joints and your muscles. Now, if you're working on joints, you need to focus in on a lot of the proprioceptive stuff, joint stability stuff, okay? Because the joints are obviously there, and the muscles are obviously attaching to them to control the bones, and so the bones can move better, okay? And the reason you're doing that is so that you can actually, mechanically, you can move better. So you want to build strength through the joints so they become more durable, okay? Now, that's a very simplistic view of it, but really what I mean is that you're looking for stability through the joint, and you're looking for strength and mobility all around that area, okay? And the only way you're going to get those is through working through stability exercises, obviously working on strengthening exercises and movement-based exercises, and then obviously increasing your range through mobility exercises. But the reason I say you want to touch on proprioceptive and vestibular work is because that's your balance work. And the balance exercises are going to be massive for the body because they help the body coordinate different movements, okay? So if you're landing from a jump, obviously the knee is going to need to be able to stabilize right, the hip will need to be able to stabilize right, and the only way it will do that is if it has good proprioceptive feedback coming through your foot, if it has good vestibular feedback also coming through your foot. Proprioceptive is your body awareness, just in case anyone doesn't know. You have proprioceptors, so an easy way of doing it, if you had your 2 hands out in front, you lifted one up to your face, and then you put it back down again, and you close your eyes, and then you lifted it up again. Can you put it in the exact same place as what it was the first time with your eyes closed, where you can't look at it? Okay, and that's your body awareness. That's your body knows where your limbs are in space. So that's going to be a really, really important one. Vestibular work then is going to be your balance. So vestibular is in your inner ear, and basically what vestibular looks at is you have a balance system in your inner ear, but it takes everything into account. So it takes your visual system into account, it takes your somatosensory system into account, it takes obviously your proprioceptors as well. All of these things are going to be taken into account so your body can stay in balance and that you don't fall over. Okay, and the only way you're going to improve on your vestibular work is by actually getting to the point that you feel you're going to fall, or falling as well. That's another way of doing it. But by doing that, your body will get better at controlling the joints and controlling the joints through range and controlling the joints in different positions. So let's say landing from a jump. If you want to reduce your risk of injury, well, then you're going to have to practice jump landings. Okay, very simple in that way. Now, how do you do that? You can practice on different surfaces. You can practice just different types of jumps, two-legged jumps, single-leg jumps, jumps from the ground, jumps from a box. There's obviously different ways, and that's where professional input comes in handy in that position. But you have to for your body to get better at controlling weight, you have to put it in situations that it has to control weight, okay, and control load. So very, very simple. When you're working on the joints, you need to look at strength around the joints, all the muscles around the joints, and then stability. You need to look at range, so that's your mobility stuff, and then strength through range, so it's able to handle different positions and tolerate different positions. And then you have to look at your plyometric stuff and your landing stuff, jump landing stuff, balance, and all that plays into the stability of the joint and being able to stabilize in different positions. And lastly, and this you're going to hear this throughout in when you're looking at any prehab program, you have to replicate the positions that you're going to be in a game, or you have to replicate the situations that you're going to be in the game. So jump landing is an excellent example because of the fact that you're going to be landing from a jump. If you catch a ball in the game, you're going to be landing down, different things like that. Now, you have to bring that across or look across the board with that. So like looking at cutting, looking at like, let's say sidestepping, cutting, spinning, accelerating, decelerating, all that stuff is all going to have to be taken into account as well, because it all plays a role, and you're at risk of injury if you go into those positions if you're not able to tolerate the load when you get into those positions. Okay, so it's really simple. You need to really look at, if you're looking at the joints, you need to look at stability, you need to look at proprioceptive and vestibular work, you need to look at your strength and your mobility around the area, and your joint control. And your joint control comes back to like your plyometrics, your jump landings, and your movements on the pitch. Okay, so that's when you're looking at joints. Now, when you're looking at muscles, small bit different, but very, 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 like in a way similar, but you just have to look at a few different things. Okay, obviously when you're looking at the joints, you have to work on the muscles as well, because that's really important. But what I'm talking about muscles here is I'm talking about like if you have like a grade 1 tear, grade 2 tear of a hamstring or a quad or a calf, then how are you prehabbing those? And how are you making sure that you aren't injuring those again in season? Well, you have to look at the demands of your sport first. That's going to be one of the primary things. Look at the demands of the sport, see what you're going to be doing, see what type of positions you're going to be in, and see like what type of explosiveness you need. When it comes to the likes of jiu-jitsu, where you're rolling on the ground, it is an explosive sport, but it's not exactly a weight-bearing explosive sport that you're driving off and that you're pushing through people. You'll need a lot more joint mobility, joint control in that sport, but you're not at risk of tearing as muscle as much in that sport, because it's not as explosive in that way. So when you look at football, hurling, rugby, soccer, when you look at those sports, they are a bit more explosive. Like you've a lot of horizontal movement, you've a lot of vertical movement, and for that you need to generate a lot of power and you push through people as well. So to be able to tolerate that load, you have to look at what you can do in the gym to replicate it, and then how you can bring that out on the pitch as well. So we're looking at building strength and power through the muscles. Now, strength is one thing. It's really important. You have to build it. You need relative strength is a really important one for recovery as well. So that's how much you can lift as compared to what weight you are. That's a huge one when it comes to GAA, and they find that the research is showing that you recover so much faster if you have very good relative strength. So that's one of the main ones. And then isolating an area, looking at the muscle itself, hamstring strength is going to be really important. Now, the hamstring works two ways. It crosses the knee, so it's a knee flexor, so it brings your heel to your butt, but it's also a hip extender because it crosses the hip as well, so it kicks out the back also. And both of those you're going to need different exercises to work those in different positions, and it's important to know that as well. Your hamstring is also made up of 3 different muscles. They obviously work simultaneously, but they work in different positions. Some of them work better than the others, okay? And then it works also with your calf on the bottom. So your hamstring and your calf co-contracts to stabilize your knee as well at the same time. Now, when you take all that into account, strength and power are really important. Strength, looking at the muscle, you're also looking at the nervous system. Power is nearly purely the nervous system itself, but your muscle has to be able to tolerate that. It has to be able to do those explosive movements, because if you haven't done the explosive movements and then you get out on the pitch and then you try to sprint, that's when you'll find that muscle will tear. Okay, so you're looking at your ability, you're looking at elasticity. I don't look at flexibility as much when I'm working with clients, because there's not a great transfer over to sport. What I'm looking at more is you could say is mobility. Are they able to do it actively? How strong are they in different positions? Because that makes much more of a difference when it comes to injury prevention stuff, as opposed to just how long or how much can the muscles stretch passively. Because a muscle doesn't usually tear when it's just been overstretched passively. It usually tears when it's contracting, or when it's overstretched and then it contracts. Okay, or when looking at a hamstring injury, it usually tears when it's eccentrically contracting. So when it's trying to control the leg and slow it down as it's swinging out, that's usually when it tears. So to prevent that happening, you have to look at how you can work on that elasticity and that strength through length, and the explosiveness as well. So eccentric strength, we all know, Nordic curls, excellent for building eccentric strength. They shouldn't be your only go-to though. You should have a range of different exercises. You shouldn't just have one exercise and say, right, that covers it, because it doesn't. It's really, really important to look at it look at it in different positions, look at it with do different exercises to hit different parts of the muscle as well, because that's really important, and to have a more holistic approach, because just one exercise isn't going to be a cure-all. Okay, so plyos are just as important for the hamstring, because it is an explosive. It's a muscle that's used in a lot of explosive movements, and the only way you're going to reduce your risk of injury is to practice explosive movements. Okay, so that's a really, really important one. And then on top of that, sprinting is actually going to be really important, because the majority of people tear their hamstring when they're sprinting. You have to practice sprinting itself. So you have to build all the strength in the gym, but then you actually have to practice sprinting itself. So including a bit more sprinting in your warm-up, doing it that you're practicing maybe a small bit at the end of training, not a lot of it, because you don't want to increase your risk either. You just want to be able to tolerate it a small bit more. But opening up the legs is going to be a really good way of reducing your risk of tearing a hamstring during a sprint. Okay, so it's really simple. Muscles, you just need to look at the movements they're going to be doing and what you can do to replicate those movements. And that's the same for the joints. So I don't mean to be repeating it over and over, but it is what you have to take into account. Now, what's the difference between in-season and off-season training? What do you include in either of them? What I would say is that in-season, you want to focus on specific areas more, areas that you know that you're weak in and that you have injured previously. Okay, and you're looking to build tolerance through those areas so they're able to handle the load a lot better. Okay, so that's like if you have tore hamstring, you're working on that hamstring. Okay, you're working on it after training, as I said, or you're working on it in the gym, and then you're planning your recovery days. And then leading straight on from that, your recovery is going to probably be the most important part of this. So in season, your recovery is extremely important in that you need days to recover. If you don't, your body will break down. You can't burn the candle from both ends, or you will, as I was saying, you will break down. You'll get niggles and you'll get strains. So recovery is going to be so important. So build your tolerance as much as you can when you're training and when you're doing your prehab work or your gym work, and then recover properly. So that's why I say do your sessions after training or in the gym, and look at sports-specific exercises as well. So practice and sprinting is a really, really important one in season, because you're going to be doing it a lot. It's probably going to be the time that you are going to injure it. And I'm still using this hamstring example all the time. So if you want to use the shoulder example, practicing hitting off people, practicing being able to take a shoulder, practicing falling on the ground is another good one. Ankles, it's practicing landing from a jump, cutting, jumping, landing, building stability through the ankle, working on your balance. That's all really important. But sport-specific exercise is going to be essential in season, because it's what you will need to do to reduce risk overall. And then probably the most important, and I don't want to make them all like, prioritize them all, but if you are prioritizing one and you're doing all your prehab work and you have all that, load management is really, 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 really essential. Okay, and load management is looking at your week, or looking at over a couple of weeks, seeing what your sessions are planned out like, seeing when matches are, knowing what your body reacts like, knowing how your body's feeling, so becoming aware of your body, and then structuring it so that you can recover as best as you can. So if you know that you're going to be training 3 or 4 days in a row, or 3 days in a row, let's say, and you have a match at the weekend, and then that's going to be repeated for 2 or 3 weeks, then all I would be focusing on there is recovery, getting your prehab in after training, and then recovering as much as you can. Because if you don't take that overall view, if you don't look at your load, you are just increasing your risk. You're just building on a fatigued body and you're going to get niggles, you're going to get injuries. So load management is so important in season, and it can be difficult when you're in the mix, when you don't really take note of it, and that's why working with a coach is a really good idea as well, because they can have a better view of what's going on. They can look at your training, they can look at your sessions, and they can look at your recovery and your injuries, and they can plan it a lot better. And it's actually something I do with all my clients. We look at load, especially when you're in season. We look at load over, let's say, the month, and we say, okay, well, this is going to be happening, or you're going to have these games here, so we need to plan appropriately so we're not hitting loads of strength work the day before it or 2 days before it. Okay, so it's really, really important to do that. Off season then, small bit more general. I'd be picking different parts, different weaknesses, finding weak points when you know that you're weak. If you're gymming a lot, you know where you're weak, and a lot of the time people avoid those areas because they know that they're weak in them, and going to the gym and working on weak areas is not that much crack, especially in the off season where you don't see the benefit of it. So it's a bit more general, work on different weak points, but then you also want to be nailing your like previous injuries or your areas that you you've previously injured, because of the fact that if you don't work on those areas, then when it comes to the season and then you actually try work on them there, you'll find that it'll be a lot more difficult to fit everything in. So if you build that relative strength, if you build that tolerance in the off season, it plays over into the season as well, and you'll find that it'll be a lot easier to focus on different things, and they won't be as big of an issue in season. So off season, you're just looking to build capacity, you're looking to build relative strength overall. So trying to get yourself as strong as possible in the off season is really important, but then also working on these movements so when you get on the field, it's not a complete shock to the system again. Okay, so guys, that's kind of everything I wanted to discuss today without dragging on anymore and repeating myself anymore. I think what I've discussed there gives a kind of a brief overview, or gives an overview of what should be included in a prehab program and what you need to look at when you are doing a prehab program, depending on the time of the season. Okay, so as I was saying, in season, off season, they're going to be different, and what you focus on is going to be a small bit different as well. But what you have in your sessions and what's in the actual program itself, like, you will still work. If it's off season, you're still going to work on the joints and the muscles. If it's in season, you still need to focus on the joints, you still need to focus on the muscles, you still need to focus on movements, and you still need to focus on sport specific movements. So they are similar in that way. It's just in the off season you have a small bit more leeway in how you can work on them. It doesn't have to be just very, very specific stuff every single day. You can take a general look at it. In season, then load management recovery is going to be huge, and that has to be built into your prehab program. It can't just be a prehab program that you take away and then you just work on it. You have to actually look at your load overall, because if you don't, you're increasing your risk. Okay, now that's it, guys. That's everything I want to discuss. If anyone is interested, definitely check out that hamstring tolerance program that I have out at the moment. Check the link in my bio. It's Mobility Tutor. You'll just go into my bio, hit Linktree. It's at the very top of the list. Click into that. And you'll get a bit more information on it. If you are doing that tolerance program, I would say, because we're in season and because I've just discussed all this, it does talk about load management and how to structure your weeks better. So that's a really important component of it. And then it talks about program design, when to do it as well. Because if you don't want to be hitting things every day and then having a match in the weekend and having trained 6 days before that. So that's why program design, if and when you do download that program, definitely watch that video, because I discuss that a lot more. I discuss like how you structure it after a session, and how you mix it into your gym sessions, and then actually planning recovery days and mixing recovery days throughout your week. So that's the hamstring tolerance program. It's on my website at the moment. Check that out. If you have any questions on it, guys, send them straight to me on mobilitytutor@gmail.com, or on LinkedIn you can send me Robbie Cassidy, or on Instagram you can just send me a message straight away. Don't hesitate to ask questions on that. I know people are trying to get themselves as best they can for this season. We've had a long off season this year again, with gyms being closed as well. So you need to keep yourself in the best nick as you can. You don't want to be sitting on the sideline when it comes to championship. So it's really, really important to get yourself right. You have a couple of weeks now to get yourself right. Focus in on it. Do the work that needs to be done. If nothing changes, nothing will change. So if you just keep getting the same injury every year and you're wondering what happens or why it's happening, well, then it's probably trying to change something. So check out the tolerance program, guys, on my website. There's also a foundational mobility program if anyone's looking for that, or if anyone is looking to get in contact with me to set up a consultation. You want to talk about recovery, you want to talk about an injury, or you want to plan your sessions a lot better, just send me a message and we can set up a consultation as well. And then lastly, if anyone is looking for coaching over I take people on for 12 weeks and over 12 weeks, but it's a minimum 12-week block. So we look at different injuries, what you've had previously, what you have at the moment, and then different mobility issues, and we take a holistic approach to it so that we can get the best out of you for the season and that you can have your body in the best shape you can, because you don't want to be sitting on the sideline looking in at games. You want to be involved in the games, especially when it comes to crunch time at the end of the season. So if you're interested in that, send me a message. We can set up a discovery call, chat through it, see if it's something for you, see if it works for both of us, and if it does, we'll kick it off. So yeah, that's, guys, absolutely everything that I want to talk about. Last time I will say it, but everything I wanted to talk about. So thanks a million for listening again. If you enjoyed this podcast, I'd love if you could send it to a friend, or share it on your story on Instagram. That makes a huge difference to the people that listen to it. It brings in a lot more people who would be interested in it all the time, because obviously I'm putting it out, but when you spread it to your friends, it spreads a lot faster, and then I know what type of stuff you want to hear as well. That's the most important thing, is I get a better idea of what you want me to cover. Send me a message if there's anything you'd like me to cover, even though I do put up boxes on Instagram, so make sure to answer those as well. But yeah, also if you wouldn't mind rating it on iTunes and subscribing to it if you're on Spotify, if you're on iTunes, Deezer, YouTube, whatever you're listening to. Yeah, thanks a million, guys. I will chat to you all again soon, and have a good one.